Have you ever cropped in so heavy onto your image that when you try to print it, it just doesn't come out looking all that great? Well, what you probably need is an upscaler. Now, one of the cool things about ON1 Photo RAW is it has Resize AI built into it, which is an AI-driven upscaler, which is going to give you more resolution for your prints. So today, we're going to take a look at how to use Resize AI on your images. Now, of course, if you want to pick up ON1 Photo RAW, they're still having their sale for their 20th anniversary. You can do so by clicking the link in the description box below. It is an affiliate link. I do make a commission from everyone that I refer there, but that's at no extra charge to you. And then, of course, if you find value in today's video, smash the like button so YouTube can recommend this to others. Let's go. So here we are inside of ON1 Photo RAW, and I have a photo of a bird. Now, I shot this on my Sony a7R4, which is a 61 megapixel camera, but I was a little further than I wanted to be, so I went ahead and activated the crop sensor mode on my Sony a7R4. What that does is it takes the 61 megapixels and it turns it into a 26 megapixel relative equivalent camera. All right. Now, what that means is I get higher magnification on my 400 millimeter lens. So instead of this being 400 millimeters equivalent, which is where I had it set, it's really more like a 600 millimeter equivalent. So it's a really quick way to get a little bit of extra distance on my lens, but here's the deal. Maybe I'm not as close to the bird as I would like to be. So that's where cropping comes in. So I'll hit the letter C to get my cropping tool. And then I'm just going to crop in a little bit tighter onto the bird and get a composition that I like, because I'm no like bird photographer or wildlife photographer. I just happened to be out. I seen the bird and I wanted to photograph it. Right. So now that I have a crop that I'd probably enjoy with a little bit of this brush at the bottom and then mostly this sky in the background, I can go ahead and commit this by hitting the blue check mark. And I have a pretty good image here. The problem is if I were to try to print this, it would not come out looking too well. And mind you, I haven't done any adjustments to this image. I'm just showing you the raw edit. So let's go ahead and add some Resize AI. So we'll just let Resize AI do its thing. It's going to give us some pretty decent tones and just adjust the image for us as we need it. And then I think it can also use some noise reduction. So we'll come down to noise and sharpening, and then I'm just going to click on no noise AI and activate that. Now, the reason why I'm doing all of this right now is before you do your resize, it's always a good idea to edit the image first. All right, so edit your image first, get it to the point where you like it, which I think that this is a good point right here. I'm going to go ahead and hit apply. It's going to save this noise reduction onto the image. And now, once it's done, I'll be able to jump into the resize tool and then we'll take a look at it. Now, to activate the resize tool, you're going to come over to the right bumper and click on this little icon that says AI, and it looks like a little box. Now, if you're not seeing this on your version of ON1, you probably don't have the right bumper activated. To activate that, you'll come up to the top here, you'll click on Window, and then you'll come all the way down to the bottom and you'll click on Show Right Bumper. So if I click this, you'll see that that bumper, it disappears for me. But I prefer to have it there because those are all of the useful tools that I like to use. Even though Resize AI is not one of my most used tools, I do use the print feature and the share feature and the export tool. All right. So now what I can do is go ahead and click on the Resize AI. And once Resize AI loads in, it's still loading down here. So we'll give it a second because that doesn't look quite right. Okay. So now that Resize AI has loaded in, and sometimes you will get some funky looking initial reactions when you activate Resize AI, but just know that that has to do with your video card and how ON1 is processing the image. So you definitely want to make sure that you have the recommended system requirements when you're using these tools, because it's just going to make the experience that much better. All right. So now that we're here, what I can do is resize my image. So over on the left, we have a few presets, and these presets are actually located or very familiar, or similar, I should say, to the print presets. But honestly, I don't use the presets over here, so we're not even going to look at those or worry about them in this particular module. You can also crop. If you happen to have some issues with the crop, you can click on the crop tool and then you can crop again on the image. But I'm not going to do that because I think I got the crop right in the photo when I was working in the edit module. So I'm just going to hit the blue check mark and leave that alone. And now that leaves us with this right panel. And you got the usual suspects: navigation, levels, and info. But down here on the right side, you have photo size, settings, noise reduction, sharpening, face recovery, film grain, tiling, and gallery wrap. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. These last two, I don't really use at all for the resizing. You may need to use those, and if you know how to use those, leave it in the comment section down below. But really, all you need to do is come up here to photo size. And as you can see, I cropped this photo down to about 6.6 megapixels. That's really, really small. Now, will it do fine on a cell phone like Instagram or Facebook or any social platform? Probably. It'll be fine. But if I wanted to print this, 6 megapixels is going to be really hard for me to print with good detail. And that's where rescaling or resizing comes in. Now, my original image was 6,240 by 4,160, which is approximately 26 megapixels if you were to multiply that and divide it by 1,000,000, right? But here's the deal. I don't need to do any of that math. All I need to do is really look right here to resize to, and you can choose a few dimension settings. So if you want to resize it to a very specific dimension, you can click on dimensions, and then you can type in what you want those dimensions to be. So if I want to put this back to the original, then I can just come over here, type in for the width, 6,240 by 4,160, so 4160, hit tab, and so now my image is resized back to that 26 megapixels. All right, that's one way of doing it if that's something that you really wanted to do. Now, the next thing that I could do is I can come over here and you can resize to the long edge. This is actually very popular for a lot of web design and showcasing online. Usually you want to resize to the long edge. So if you click long edge, all you have to do is choose what you want that long edge to be. So sometimes it's like 2500 or no more than 2500 pixels on the long edge. So if you do that, now you have an image that's resized and it's proportionate for 2500 pixels on the long edge. And then you could also do the same thing for the short edge. And then width and height, it works essentially the exact same way. Again, that's more of proportionate. But where it gets fun is with the megapixels, because many of us understand what needs to be in the photo or what megapixels are based off of our camera. So if I want to get this to hit the original 26 megapixels that it was shot at, all I have to do is type in 26 and hit tab on my keyboard. And now I have 26 megapixel or a 26 megapixel image. I need to use English better. I get twisted over my words, but I now have a 26 megapixel image. All right. But let's say I wanted to make this 33. Maybe I'm using a different camera and I have more megapixels. So let's go 33, hit tab. And so now I've made it a little bit larger. So when I zoom in, I have a little bit more detail. Now, the challenge that we're running into here is I am increasing this beyond what the original image even had. So it's really making up a lot of stuff to make this image look somewhat decent. So let's see if I can get it all the way up to the original 61 megapixels, even though I never shot this at 61 megapixels. So we'll hit tab and then we'll click in here and you can see I'm getting some artifacts. So what does this tell us? This is a great tool for recovering up to and maybe just a little bit beyond what the original image was before the cropping. But trying to upscale even further than this or further than that, you may introduce some pixel issues here. And then of course you can change the resolution. So let's see if that fixes. So let's go 72. That seems to be a popular resolution, or maybe 300. Let's go with 300. But this is usually just for the print. Yeah, so it's not doing anything for our preview here. So let's just go ahead and reset this to 26 megapixels because that's where I think that this was doing the best. And then we'll just go with 4000 for the resolution and we'll zoom out a little bit. So that's the first step. All right. Now you can do a little bit more work on the image. So we can click on settings and you have a few options in here for the method for the settings that are being used to apply the AI algorithm to adjust the size of the image. So if you click in here, you have 2023 faithful, and then you have genuine fractals, and then you have bicubic. Now, I'm going to be honest. I don't know what many of these things are, but if this is something that you want to explore, then by all means, you have access to it. Just know that it's here under the method. Now, when it comes to smoothness, we'll just go ahead and crank that all the way up. Smoothness will help with making the transition between the added pixels that it is increasing in your image to the pixels that were already there. It'll just smooth that out a little bit to help with the artifacting overall. So smoothness, you got to play around with this based off of your image, but just know that it is under settings and it is a tool that's helpful based off of the method that you have selected here, how well it's blending in with your underlying image or the base image that you have. Then we move into tools that I think you'll be familiar with. Noise reduction is pretty simple. This isn't like the no noise AI where you have a little bit more granularity over how well it impacts your image. However, you do have noise reduction capabilities where you can reduce some noise in the overall image. But again, this is why I was recommending you should do all of your noise reduction and things of that sort ahead of time before entering into here. So then you don't have to worry about any of this stuff. All right. Same thing with sharpening. This is using the sharpening filter that's located in the effects portion of ON1. But again, if you use No Noise AI or Tack Sharp AI before you come into Resize AI, you can just skip over these and it makes it so much easier. Face recovery, this is something very specific. In this case, we don't have a face, but for people, if you are resizing an image and it needs to recover a face, it does a pretty good job. So you can definitely try that out. And then again, film grain. So this is the film grain filter that's inside of the ON1 effects. I don't mess with this and I don't recommend messing with it unless you are genuinely not using ON1 to edit the image and you just want to put the film grain on, because I recommend that after you resize the image, you're done with editing the photo. So that's just my personal recommendation. If you have one, leave it in the comment section, because I'm sure there are many ways of using this tool. Again, I don't use it all that frequent, but when I have used it, I usually just edit my image and then I resize it so that way the final version of the photo is a little bit more upscaled than what I had originally had inside of ON1. Then you have tiling and the gallery wrap. Again, I don't use either of those, so I'm not going to cover them in today's video. But if you look at the user manual, there is some information in there about these two options, and I think that that would be the best way. But I'm not, because I don't use them, I don't feel comfortable trying to explain something that I don't really bother with. So once that's done, what you do is you'll hit the blue check mark down here. Now, this check mark is different than the check mark where you're confirming your edits inside of ON1 Photo RAW. So when I click it, it's going to take all of the information that I just put in over here, and it's going to try and compress it into a single file for us. So just give your computer a little bit of time here. And again, your system requirements and recommendations really do matter. So what ends up happening is ON1 is going to try to save a file in the location where your original image lived, the one that you were working on, because this does not override that image. Now, up here at the top, you can rename this to whatever you want. I usually just leave it set to whatever the file name is, -resize. That way it just ends up right next to the original file. That's my personal way of doing it. But if you click right here where it says Photoshop, because right now it's saving as a Photoshop document or a PSD, which could be helpful if you're using Photoshop. But if you're not and you don't really care to have a PSD file, then you can just click the little drop down and select a file type that is actually appropriate for you. So you can go with DNG, JPEG, or TIFF. Those are typically the ones that I would recommend. You could also try the JXL, which is like JPEG extra large, and then PNG. But I usually steer away from those two, and I would go with either a DNG, JPEG, or a TIFF. I'm going to go ahead and select DNG because it's always good to have a digital negative photo to kind of work off of. But again, I wouldn't want to continue working on this image. So really, if you're completely done with all your edits, again, the way that I would recommend is you really just choose TIFF or JPEG, something that's going to give you a final version. And if you plan to print this, which is probably the reason that you're resizing it, I would go with a TIFF because that's going to give more information for your print company to actually record. So if I click on TIFF and then I hit save, it's going to save that image into the folder, the original folder where the file was located that we started working with. All right. So once this is done saving the file, it's going to exit us from the AI workspace. All right. So once that gets done, it exits you out into your actual browse workspace. So we're going to hit the letter G on the keyboard to get our grid. And you can see to the left of my original image, I now have that TIFF file that we just created. So if I click on it and hit the space bar, you can see I now have this file, and it's pretty close to the original dimensions of what I created before, which is 5,702, which the other one was like 6,000 pixels by 4,000. This is 5,000 by 4,500. So really close to what I had originally when I went into the editing workspace, and that's the benefit of using Resize. So I should be able to print this image and have pretty good detail overall. Now, is it perfect? Absolutely not, but no tool actually is perfect. This is just a great way of getting your images resized just a little bit larger so you can print them if you lost some quality when you experience a print job. So hopefully you found value in this. If you did, smash the like button. And if you got questions, leave it in the comment section below. I will do my best to answer questions specifically about the Resize AI. But if I'm being honest, this is not a tool that I use all the time. I only use it when I'm in a pinch and I realize that something didn't come out the way that I wanted it to when I was printing it, or I just didn't have enough resolution when I was uploading to a website or sharing with another friend because they needed something that was going to be a little bit larger. This also comes in extremely handy when you are scanning in old images and you have to crop a little bit, and then you want to regain some of that quality or resolution that you may have lost when you were cropping a scanned photo. So lots of different scenarios where you can use this tool, but This was just a quick one because I think a lot of bird photographers will use something similar to this just to get their resolution back after cropping. So until next time, I want you to stay inspired and keep creating. Peace.